Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Lighting the Candle, A World That Works. I'm Bill Correll, and once again with me, I have my old friends, Ken Caputo and also Lisa Sheehan, two of the originals who started doing this with me about a year ago. So the interesting part of all of this is there's been so much going on. I kind of checked out and went off the grid for a little while. Still managed to get some podcasts in, but we do this for one reason and one reason only. Um, it's empowerment. It's empowerment, while we're speaking with each other, and it's also empowerment thinking about the good that it can do in the world if our words are reaching you at all and making a difference in your life. That's what we're about. So as we go through and we talk about our different subjects every week, seriously, it's all about how do we connect with human beings on a very personal level that allows them to connect with their lives in a way that they are in motion and not stopped. So having said that, I have a thought. We've talked about so many different things, and I think we're up to episode 75, if memory serves. Yeah, I think it's 75. So that being the case, I'd like to do something a little bit different. And, we always have this kind of an interesting yin and yang, with the front of the hand, back of the hand kind of a deal. How about today we talk about breakthroughs and breakdowns? I think that'd be kind of an interesting, conversation to talk about, as most people have relationships to failure and success that in many cases are not examined, and in many cases, if they are really putting things to the test, and if there's a workable way to produce breakdowns and breakthroughs, would there be value in people's lives? I just kind of wonder about that. So as usual, I'm going to introduce Lisa first, because she was on the call first today, and then Ken, you can come after that. Lisa, what do you think about this topic? Do you have, if you want to take another one, by all means.
Oh no, oh, this is a great one because I think as humans we can't avoid. Well, we could probably avoid breakthroughs, but we cannot avoid breakdowns. I don't think. Hopefully, we have enough breakthroughs to balance them out. But breakdowns, I was the first thing that came to my mind was the ability to honor and reflect on all of your emotions and to not bury them because I've read a lot lately about not only personal trauma that gets trapped in your body and then comes up in different ways, but the collective trauma that we feel in times of horrific events that also add to the trauma, not only in your generation, but future generations by hiding in your cells and you pass that on. And we've done such a brilliant job of that over history of ignoring what happened or just sweeping it under the rug. And it's not good personally, and it's not good as a collective either.
Well, terrific. It sounds like you definitely have an opinion on this subject. I like that. So, uh, Ken, any thoughts that you have to get kind of kick things off?
My first thought was they're the same thing. It was just kind of interesting. As soon as you said it, it flashed like, it's just, and then I thought maybe a better way to consider it would be two sides of the same coin, because whether it's a breakthrough or a breakdown is really just a matter of perspective, because how often is something feels broken down or there's a change and it actually is a breakthrough. The realization that a relationship has ended, can lead to that perspective of loss and all of that. But on the other side of that, that can lead to a new new insights, new strengths, or inhibitions. I mean, all that stuff. So yeah, so what was interesting was just thinking in terms of what's the perspective that you apply to it, and have you trained to see it through lenses that are going to be beneficial to you and your circles.
Yeah, when Lisa was speaking and talking about what I like to call institutional knowledge, these are the
Mm.
things that collectively a culture, in an organization, a family, a community can have situations come up, and we pass over them without actually completing, you know? There's this whole possibility that it, as you mentioned earlier, that it gets, into the subconscious of the cell at the cellular level, and then is there to come back out at the least opportune time. And I've heard that kind of a description and discussion many times. And I want to say, Ken, in terms of the overall, what is a breakdown and what is a breakthrough, they're both declared phenomenons. There is no is breakdown and no is breakthrough. When it comes down to it, they're very subjective. They have everything to do with your own personal experience of what's actually happening to you. And the choice of empowerment could be to declare either one or both of those at the same time. So if you think about what a breakdown is, it's where there's an intended result that is either thwarted or complete failure, whatever, however else you want to talk about it. But it's an unmet expectation that just isn't satisfied, and that's one working definition that I think I can use in order to say some more about the other side of it, which is a breakthrough. A breakthrough in this description would be the absence of the breakdown, as I described it, and an experience of having succeeded in a place or an event or a time or some set of circumstances that's very familiar, that usually is associated with not succeeding. And if that's the case, a breakdown might be considered by most people as a not good thing. It might be considered as, this is painful. It might be considered by other people, like for instance, professional athletes. They're almost never interested in when things went well for them. They don't learn anything from that. They're really, really, really looking to see how they can break down what seems to be working so that they also can put in corrective action as a result of it not working. That gives them their professional edge. That gives them the opportunity to exercise the I say phenomenon, which is the I say that I will never be as good as tomorrow as I can be at the day after, for instance. I don't know who I heard say that the first time, but it kind of stuck with me, that continuous growth and ongoing growth and development in a lifetime is never satisfied with a status quo. The status quo always returns that person, as we say frequently around here, to a place where there's a better question that can be asked. And when that better question is fully embraced and actually it appears, it's like the better question didn't exist until it's askable, and sometimes it lives in the domain of things that can't yet be said because we don't know enough about what we don't know to be able to ask that question and have the better question, right? Or we'd have asked it before. How's that for some logic?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting as you were talking, I had like just thinking about what a breakdown actually is, and I actually wrote it as a little note so I wouldn't forget it, because it'll probably be gone in 10 minutes from now. But it kind of speaks to that athlete thing, because so what I wrote was, when a system is stressed to the point where it no longer functions as intended. And I mean, it could be a relationship, it could be, a fitness thing, it could be a business, doesn't matter. So now the curious thing, like with an athlete, the whole point is to intentionally stress it until the breakdown occurs, so that you can identify how how much stress it can handle. And that often is what leads to breakthroughs in new ways of viewing it, or efficiencies, or even elevating or evolving, whatever it is. So I guess that's what, they're interesting, those two words, because what I'm thinking about is, how do people relate to that? Do they see that as a positive that can help them, evolve the different elements of their life, or do they see it as something that you avoid and and stay, like, quote unquote, safe by trying not to stress the system, so that you don't, like unintentionally or intentionally break it.
Mm.
I don't have the answer. It's just an interesting way to view it, I guess.
So Lisa, since you kicked us off and gave us a domain to play in, what are your thoughts now, a few minutes later?
Oh, I love what Ken said. What you both said about looking at to the point that the breakdown could be the breakthrough, basically. Um, I was watching a YouTube video this morning about saying yes to everything, and it's not me. It's basically about looking at the situation from the point of view of how can you look at this differently, and can you turn it into a positive yes, into a yes situation for yourself.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that's basically what you both are saying is to look at it from all angles, and it comes back down to also like helping to live in the moment, because each moment can be looked at from a different angle. And well, that's basically it. Breakthrough to breakdown to breakthrough.
Yeah. So you're both familiar with what a koan is, right? A koan is a question or a statement there is no intended result for. The answer is the booby prize. The whole idea is to hang out with the concept of the question or the statement that's in a koan, and then along the way reveal new things about yourself, and which is ultimately all we're ever going to know. I mean, we go through life acting like we can know other people and we can know things and all the rest of that, but no, we're really only getting our own reaction to whatever else is playing in our lives at the moment. And so when I think about some of the powerful koans that I've listened to over the years, one of them kind of has to do with I mean, we're talking about breakthroughs and breakdowns, and a breakdown very vividly can be observed in an automobile that just suddenly stops working for some reason or another, and there's a complete loss of empowerment as a result of that. And I believe that most people would identify with the loss of empowerment portion of breakdown, that it's unintended, I don't like it, this is not supposed to happen to me or not supposed to happen at all. However, again, we go back to people that are on a course of action where they're just intending to accomplish great things in their lives and their business and their relationships. And they want to be tested. I mean, they literally are creating mischief for themselves. Do you remember the Pink Panther movies?
I love those.
Where Inspector Clouseau had set up Kato, his handy sidekick, to attack him at random in all these different places just so he could see how he would respond to it. Not now, Kato, And so when you stop and think about someone who's constantly inviting this opportunity to occur, the event to randomly happen, most of the time it's going to be when it's least, shall we say, convenient. Many times the emotion associated with a breakdown comes from the fact that this wasn't supposed to happen at this particular time. I had it more or less scheduled for about a week from now when other things were under control. So, so the neat part of all of that is, going back to the koan, in the question that that I remember. Actually, this is a statement, not a question. It is a Buddhist statement to make before meditating, and it's the answer to every question is yes. So that's a very interesting question. And if you stop your mind long enough to listen to that question, and it is a question, but it's stated in the affirmative, the answer to every question is yes. So an intelligent person is going to want to play with that a little bit. Yeah, sure, I get it. Yes, the answer is yes. And, and it's like hearing you talk about what you watched this morning, Lisa, on that the video. There's a complete and particular kind of listening that gets set up if you give yourself not only the permission, but the mandate that no matter what the question is, the answer ultimately has to be yes. And so in this situation with, excuse me one second. We have people coming to work on our chimneys today, so there's a little breakdown. All right. So when we think about all the things that go on in front door. We'll get this done. You at home, any of you who like to work on chimneys, you can come to my house right now. So when I think in terms of that particular statement, and we had conversations in a group that would go on for 30 or 40 minutes, challenging the whole notion of whether or not it was a good question, or what did it mean, or how could it possibly be always a yes, or all of these things that a thinking person would normally react to, as opposed to submitting to the will of the koan, which is, you're supposed to have all those answers. Those aren't the right answers, so keep going. So I'm interested more, Lisa, in what you saw in your video this morning having to do with the answer yes.
Well, it was Rupert Spira. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. It's either Rupert Spira or Spira. But he was being questioned about how to say yes to everything. And so it's a hard concept to completely grasp, because there's also a no to the mind. You can, from the mind level, you can say no. Like if somebody's getting beat up on the street, you say, your mind has to say, no, that is not wrong. You know, you cannot say yes to that. It is wrong in reality, kind of thing. So it's a hard concept to grasp. And I like having the challenge of saying yes to everything. I think it's a good, we always talk about saying yes to, finding a better question. So if you always know the answer, you can just concentrating on finding the better question all the time. And I also watched about meditation too, where one of the good questions to ask yourself to get yourself into that state is to say, what is my next thought? Because then your mind starts going, okay, what is my next thought, kind of thing. And then you could stop the monkey mind sort of thing. And then to sit there and actually to say yes to everything, you have to be coming from your heart center more than your mind. So to get into that space and see what your true yes really is. And we've talked about like compass points and stuff like that, like what your true north is, and to figure it out from that vantage point, what your yes truly should be. And it's a definite feeling. It's a sense that it's correct, but you have to get into that state where you're ready to receive that yes in the proper way. So, and I think that's a thing that most people don't take the time to do. I was stressed out in the middle of the day yesterday, so I ran downstairs and did a YouTube, meditation. So me and Muji spent about 10 minutes together. But so I think that to settle in for a yes, so you can get to the breakthroughs easier when you're coming from that point, from that perspective.
Interesting.
My favorite saying is, when your head and your heart are singing the same song. Yeah.
I love that.
It also kind of reminds me of, have you ever just said a word over and over and over again, and then really started to question whether it's a word at all, or to the point where it's nonsensical, it has no meaning, and it's like, how in the heck did we ever describe that this sound has all that stuff attached and going on with it, And we did that with yes. We just said yes like 100 times, and somewhere around 30 or 40, each one of us got to the place where we couldn't believe that we were actually saying a word that meant anything whatsoever. And it's an interesting exercise. I offer it up as if you're having a bad day, pick any word that you want to. I mean, bicycle, it can be truck, it can be, any word that you want to say. If you say it enough times, it will be very comical, or you'll have some other type of reaction to it that takes away whatever you're feeling in terms of being disempowered. Don't take my word for it. Actually do it and see how it works out for you. Very cool. So Ken, more yes stuff.
Well, that's kind of interesting because the last couple of years for me has been practicing no. And
Boundaries, right? Yeah.
there's a great book. I can't remember the author. It's called Essentialism, and and it's about
Greg
you
McKeown.
know. Oh, yep, there you go. How is it pronounced? Greg McKeown?
McEwen, I think, but it's spelled
McEwen, yeah.
McKeown. Or...
Yeah, yeah. And it was really interesting when it's considering when you're an enthusiastic and open person, you can kind of overwhelm yourself with yeses and create a lot of clutter in your life. So this was about developing this kind of discipline and discernment to not really narrow your focus, but just remove the extraneous, that's unnecessary. So it's kind of funny. So I'm listening to this and agreeing with it because it's been a big staple in my personal life, and a little bit too much exuberance maybe led to an overload of of yeses. So it's actually been playing with the other side of that coin, and learning to say no, which has been just as balancing and helpful. I think it's like, where's the optimal? What does optimal mean to us, and how do we create a life that feels like it's moving to and through balance? It doesn't balance isn't like something you achieve. It's something that oscillates, and it's the dynamic tension that gives the illusion of balance. you know so what does that look like? So what are those, where's your center of gravity right now? Do you need more yeses in your life, or do you need more nos? And how do you recognize that? And what's the practice that keeps you in tune with that?
Great question. Any thoughts, Lisa?
Well, I was thinking. Well, basically, I was wondering, Ken, what you thought about it being the difference between the mind and the body, because a lot of those, when we break down to the essentials, are productivity kind of issues that you have stuck in your, that are busying your mind. So if you break it down to what's good for the body and the soul, that's where the yeses would lie. So I think they work together, like you were saying, essentialism and balance, and yeses and nos.
So, and here's an actually interesting thing, because it's been doing, there's a lot of just really interesting research. I'm actually reading a pretty cool book right now called The Midlife Cyclist, and it's about the fact that we're in a generation, I'm one of them, of human beings, age of 40 on, but into their 50s and 60s and even 70s now, who are continuing to be, they're choosing to be physical high performers, like challenge their bodies in ways that previous generations would not be at that age. And so there's more and more data about, is that healthy? What does that do? So and for me, I'm interested in health span, not necessarily lifespan, but just being healthy so that I can maximize my impact on the world, and be functional. So one of the things that's coming out of that is the importance of understanding how to not train as frequently and as long at super high intensities as you age. Like, there's one thing I was reading, it was saying that like a HIIT workout, a high intensity workout where you really get the heart rate up, once you're into your 40s, really you don't need to do that more than once every 5 to 10 days. And that's it. That's all you need. And I'm like, oh, geez, because I do it a lot more than that, So I started playing with it, and it was really interesting because even for the body, it was starting to think, okay, this try harder, do more, work out more, eat more healthy, all of those things. There's some no's in there that can actually help, keep you from basically wearing yourself out, stressing the heart more than it should be, and kind of finding that balance, which shifts from when you're in your 20s and 30s. So it's kind of funny. It just feels like it's everything else. There's no absolute and there's no answer. It's just looking at these counterbalancing forces and then considering how to navigate them in a way which feels balanced to you, knowing that that's impermanent and temporary and will change as we continue to change.
It's an interesting concept. You start looking at balance and equilibrium, uh, and the pendulum effect, that things in motion tend to stay in motion until there's an effect of inertia where the mass it has to go back the other way. And if you think about the whole idea of yes at one end and no at the other end, just to simplify things, because they never are, as long as the pendulum stays in motion, the experience of balance can be fleeting. If it is, that lowest point in the arc is where true balance is, because there's neither, where, let's just say, equilibrium between the yes and the no. And that's also giving you lots of room for breakdowns to occur in the rest of the arc when things are continuing to move in a direction that don't seem quite natural to you, or your thrownness might be to resist and to fight it. And in many cases, I think when people get upset about something that's going on in their life, there's two things that are going on. I want to say that it might be an undistinguished set of those conversations that Lisa was talking about earlier that got salted away somewhere and are coming back up and reacting in a particular fashion, where you're not feeling balanced or at any sort of equilibrium whatsoever. And that at that time, instead of, as most people will try to do, which is to analyze and figure out what's wrong. I mean, everybody knows what that little voice sounds like. Why am I doing this? That's a great question. And the word why with anything after it is kind of a fool's errand, because you will come up with an answer. It may not necessarily be your most inspired thinking. So the whole idea and the thought process of, let me just declare this as a phenomenon called a breakdown. I don't have to get any deeper into the weeds about it. Rocks are rocks, trees are trees, breakdowns are breakdowns, and this is one. So now the conversation can then go back to looking at the good questions again. What's a good question? And Lisa said something very interesting earlier, like, and I'm going to take this one away and play with it later on. Like, what's my next thought going to be? I love that. I love that because it is a thought that is going to necessarily have an immediate reaction by each one of us. You will have a next thought, and there are no questions that ever go unanswered in the human existence from my experience. If you ask a question of anyone at any time in any place, rarely, but sometimes you get somebody who answers the question in a very odd way, and they'll say something like, I don't know. And it's kind of an interesting thing. If you ask yourself, what's my next question going to be? And the answer to that question is, I don't know. And now what? Or something along those lines. Where's the continued sense of breakdown and potential lack of balance and all the rest of that sort of thing? Things can be nice in a moment, for a moment, and that moment can be just enough to crack everything wide open and be replaced with laughter, or be replaced with some other emotion other than the one that is really, really regretting, that this thing actually happened in your life right now, So coming back to breakdowns and breakthroughs, there is kind of a, in my conversations with people, they do identify a breakdown as something that's not necessarily good, and a breakthrough as something to strive for, and that is, that's an ultimate achievement, that once you've had breakthroughs. And they're getting, their feedback. Scientific approach is to do experiments, and fail and fail and fail and fail until one succeeds. And there's something to learn from that success. But it's the failures that taught them all the things that they had to take into consideration to get to that one success. Now it's called, can we duplicate what we learned from all of those failures to do 2 of these that work in a row, or are we back at the starting line again? So I don't know, in both of your experiences, how many human beings do you know that are out there on a daily basis challenging themselves and their behaviors and their thought processes to that degree?
I know a lot.
I'm hoping more and
But
more.
that's
of the
because those are the people I
know.
choose to hang out with. Yeah.
Exactly. So the whole idea is that if you surround yourself with conversation
Right.
that's nourishing and feeding you
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the direction that you want to go, you will get great ideas that are not practical for you right in the moment that you hear the great idea. It's just like, wow, how come I never thought of that, But what it boils down to is that there's some experience in your future that you can shoot for, by challenging yourself with whatever it was that you heard that just now all of a sudden starts to make sense. And both of you folks, it's really kind of neat for one of you to say, well, I don't know who the author was. And the other one goes, well, that was, and that's part of why I say that this works on a weekly basis, to get together and kick different things around, simply because in terms of our listeners and you folks at home, we're having this word salad on a weekly basis just to see if there's something here that would be useful for you, that during the course of your week, you can draw on something that Ken said or something that Lisa said. And all of a sudden, it's like, you had to phone a friend, but no, it's actually in your back pocket already. It's there. It's going to come up for you when you need it, kind of like a time release. So any other thoughts on the downside here? Maybe we can spend the next half hour maybe talking a little bit more on the breakthroughs. Does that make sense?
I like it.
Anything to wrap up? Ken? Closing thoughts for this half hour?
I think consider how healthy your relationship is with breakdowns, what your relationship is to breakdowns. That's all. That's what I'm taking away from this. That's going to be my little thought experiment.
Lisa, anything else on breakdowns? Fair enough. We are going to call it out here.
Thought that came to my mind was to give both breakthroughs and breakdowns.
To give both breakthroughs and breakdowns a what?
I know my internet is being funky.
It's okay.
So I don't know.
It's a breakdown, but we'll have to be a breakthrough.
There's a breakdown. I'm going to look at that.
All right. So we'll just call it timeout here, and we'll pick it up on the other side. Thank you, everybody. Bye for now.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.